So what I'd like to do today is to go ahead and cover my reasons for why, after all these years, I finally went ahead and pulled the trigger and bought an N64 console. So there were two major factors that had kind of built up over the years since the N64's release and, being discontinued for why I finally said, okay, I want to do this, I want to commit to it, and, just really get an N64 and really, just get into it. And so the first one was the fact that outside of the N64, there's not really a good, solid, 100% compatible and comprehensive emulator for the system. Okay? So, because, most people will tell you to this day, if you ask them and say, hey, what's the best emulator for the N64? They'll say, go buy an N64 console and go pick up an EverDrive cartridge. So, still to this day, you still need to have at least an N64 console in order to have the best comprehensive emulation for it. So that was the biggest thing for me, was the fact that it's like, okay, yeah, I can go and emulate all these other consoles, and it's very easy to do, and they're very seamless, flawless, very minimal hassle. But the N64, quite honestly, a lot of times it can be a pain when you're not talking about the N64 console itself to go ahead and emulate it. And I say this as somebody who's got one, who has both the real N64 as well as emulation. So I just decided that, okay, so this would make sense. I would go out and purchase this hardware because this is a system that doesn't have a really solid, comprehensive emulator out there outside of the N64 itself. So that was the first one, and that was the biggest thing that drove me to it. The second one was that this one is actually, in my opinion, a very downplayed reason to get an N64. Okay? It's not surprising to see somebody to go out there and purchase an N64 because they really want to play Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, or, to a lesser extent, Majora's Mask. There are a lot of people out there who will go out and say, okay, I really want to play the original, Paper Mario. I want to play Mario 64. I want to play Mario Parties 1, 2, and 3. Or the Rareware games, Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, and just those are the things that you generally hear. But what you don't hear a lot about is people saying, hey, I'm really into racing games. I love racing games. I'm going to go out and buy an N64. And a lot of people look at you kind of funny and go, why on earth would you purchase an N64 for racing games? Well, on the surface, it seems like a bizarre purchase, but when you delve into it a little bit more, you realize that the N64 had a very impressive racing game library. For anybody who is a fan of the arcade-style Midway games, yes, I'm talking about San Francisco Rush, Rush 2, Rush 2049, California Speed, Cruisin' USA, Cruisin' World, Cruisin' Exotica, and Stunt Racer 64, the elusive one that's hard to find the original for. Just to name a few, and there were other titles that they did do as well. But the bottom line is, if you look at it, and all those titles that I just mentioned, to play that entire library of all those titles that I just listed, there's only one way you're going to do it, and that's with an N64. So the N64, it just, as I said, it's just one of those things where it was kind of a surprise to me, but I was really into racing games. And, some of those titles, like, the original San Francisco Rush and Rush 2049, did end up on other systems because, the original San Francisco Rush did end up on the PlayStation 1. But as somebody who actually owned the PlayStation 1 version, I can tell you, the PlayStation version of San Francisco Rush was absolute trash. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. It was trash. There were like little things that they got, there's a part of there where there's a secret where you can go off on one level and do a cool loop or whatever. On the PlayStation version, they were too lazy to put the loop in there or couldn't make it work with the hardware. So what they did was they just put a brick wall in there for you to run into when you try and take the shortcut. Which, needless to say, that angered me to no end because I got used to the arcade version where you could get this cool secret and take the shortcut and stuff. But on the N64 version, they kept that in there. So anyways, that was just one example. But yeah, the PlayStation version of the original was just trash. So in my opinion, the first, and then the second one, of course, was an N64 exclusive. It was never released for any other system. The third one was released also for the Dreamcast, and yes, the Dreamcast version is very respectable, and some people say it's actually a little bit better. But once again, you're talking about literally one title and not that whole library I just mentioned. You can't get all those other games for the Dreamcast. So, or PlayStation or any other system. So the only way you're going to be able to play all those games is you either go out and spend thousands of dollars buying the arcade machines, or you go pick up an N64 and you pick up the titles. So anyway, those were the two biggest reasons why I went ahead and ended up purchasing the N64 and why I committed to it and actually, buying the console, actually buying the games. And, because I decided, I said, okay, there's one system I'm going to do it right with, and we'll go ahead and just commit to the N64, call it good, and have fun with it. And honestly, I didn't think I was going to have as much fun with it or purchase as many titles for it as I have, but honestly, I really have. I've been shocked because, and I'm sure if any of my high school friends are watching this, they're probably laughing at me right now because I was a very, very big N64 detractor at the time. I was a huge PlayStation guy. But over the years, I've also been able to put that aside and to recognize, hey, I really enjoy racing games. I don't care what system they're on, and if they're fun, they're good, I'm going to go ahead and really just, get into it regardless of what system that they're on. And so for me to be able to have these racing games that were just ones that I truly, really enjoyed at the arcades and stuff, and being able to play them in my home in a cost-effective manner, if I got to buy an N64 to do that, so be it. And as I said, I've ended up finding a number of different titles as well that whether it be myself or whether it be my kids who just really they really love them and enjoy them. I've got one who really enjoys the Legend of Zelda games, one who's really into the Mario games, and so obviously I broadened beyond just racing titles for the games for them. But it's been fun. I've really enjoyed it and really gotten into it and had fun with the system, and have a whole new respect for it now after all these years. And I just really think that there's a lot of points on the N64 that are missed by a lot of people. And yeah, I'm still never going to say that the N64 Boomerang controller was the best design controller by any stretch of the imagination, because it's not. It's a pain in the butt, but the system itself, it does have merit, and I think a lot of people overlook that. And so I figured I would just go ahead and pass along my reasons for why I went ahead and purchased one, and why I've really learned to just grow to enjoy it. And that's all I've got, and thanks for watching.